Some of us have wonderful children who may take a little bit longer to launch out of the house than others. I can tell you for my son, he's 10, and I'm guessing he probably won't leave the house until he's about, 22, 25. He has high functioning autism, and he's just very attached to us. And I don't know if he's going to be able to work or support himself. So he's not yet launched, but perhaps your child is 18, 20, 25. They're still living at home. They might have an undiagnosed mental health challenge. And I know for a lot of families, COVID has hit much harder. Your child might have been just kind of borderline going out, interacting with people, and then after COVID, they're completely reclusive. They won't go out of their house. This has been a big issue. So what type of estate planning do you need when you have a child who might be in this difficult situation, or maybe due to a developmental disability, they just haven't been able to launch yet? So in this video, we're going to talk all about that. Okay, so the first thing I think that's really important for a kid, whether they've launched or not, is when they turn 18, everybody, whether they have developmental disabilities, whether they're doing great and they're about to go to college, anything, they should have a durable power of attorney and an advanced healthcare directive. All right, so why do you get these? Basically, you get this to avoid a conservatorship. A durable power of attorney is where your child signs, usually to allow their parents, to allow you guys to sign anything financially related on their behalf. So if they need to, move into different housing or access a small bank account of theirs, this can be used for that reason. And then also an advanced healthcare directive, super important. All right, this allows you to talk to the doctors on their behalf, to access their medical records. You might tell me, but Ellen, I'm their parent. Of course I can do that, right? Not necessarily. Once your child turns 18, they're presumed to be an adult. They may not want you to access their medical records, or that presumption just isn't there anymore. So you have them sign a healthcare directive where they name you as their agent, and that means that you can talk to the doctors. You can access their healthcare directives. You want them to waive their HIPAA rights, their right to privacy for their medical records, so you can access these things. Whenever I'm talking to a client and they have a child who's age 18 or over, I implore them to get their child to sign these two documents. And most children will. There are some oppositional children who won't do it. And then there's also some children who don't have the capacity to do so. Perhaps they might need to be conserved. But for most children, they will be willing to sign this. So then if they're hiking and they have a big accident, or if any sort of thing happens, then you can step in and help them with their day-to-day responsibility. Okay, the next approach that I think is really important is if your child needs some extra assistance making decisions, right? You're trying to teach them how to make wise decisions, even though they haven't quite launched yet. I really like what's developed recently called supported decision making. So basically, this is where you create a team of people that your child trusts, and you help your child choose who is in their life, which adults typically are in their lives, who help them with different things. Maybe it might be a psychologist, who can help them with things, or it might be you, or it might be another family member. And you talk to, or they can talk to that adult and sign a contract where the adult understands, hey, when this type of issue comes up, when they have questions about dating, when they have questions about managing money, then I'm on hand, I'm on board to help answer those questions. And when you think about it, we all need that kind of help, don't we? We all need that team of trusted advisors who we can go to. This is just more formalized. So especially the adult understands how important this is, and the child also gets some buy-in to help them to grow slowly but surely in their independence skills. And I think we can all agree that we all want our children to be as independent as possible. That's going to end up in a different place, but if they're not launched yet, this helps them to take steps towards independence. Another thing you may have already done, but I think is important, is to set up your child with a small savings account. Start teaching them, the basics of money management, or maybe they already have this down. But if they have a disability, you can set up an ABLE account for them. I actually have 2 videos on ABLE accounts, but I think that this is the most common use of an ABLE account is actually allowing the disabled individual to manage the money themselves. This is money that doesn't count towards their public benefits, so it's kind of invisible from that perspective. You can put up to $17,000 each year into this account. So this can be their spending money, and they can utilize it, they can manage it, and it won't go, if they're getting SSI, for example, it won't go over their $2,000 limit and they can blow it, all right? So this is really important to, for all of us really, but especially for a child who is not yet launched. So those are my steps for the child, for helping your child with their launching skills. But what about for you, for your estate planning? What's important there? All right, so you just may not know, how will my child be able to manage their inheritance? What happens to their inheritance? I usually suggest setting up either, if your child is disabled, setting up a special needs trust, or if they don't have a diagnosed disability, maybe they're not good with money, or maybe they have a mental health challenge, but they'll never receive public benefits, then you might want to set up a Dynasty trust, okay? I have videos on both of those, on special needs trusts and Dynasty trusts, and I suggest that you watch them to get a better idea of when one might be better and when the other one might be. So sometimes a child can receive an allowance from that trust, maybe a stipend or $1,000 a month allowance, but if they're receiving public benefits, you don't want to set it up to distribute cash directly. But you still can set it up so the child has a Visa card and they can pay for certain things. So their hands aren't like completely tied. You set it up perhaps so somebody else is managing the money, somebody else is successor trustee, but the child still has some flexibility and can still grow in their independence and their adulting, right? So then the question is, well, who would manage that trust? If my child isn't quite up for that task, they might be receiving quite a large inheritance, and we don't want them to blow through it. We also don't want financial predators to be able to attack our child and get all the money that the child needs really to preserve for the rest of their lifetime. I mean, this is super important, right? So in that case, I suggest, find a good successor trustee. And I have a video on how to choose a successor trustee. Now, this video is specifically for choosing a successor trustee for your special needs trust, but it's also a really good video, I think, for how to choose a successor trustee for your child's Dynasty trust. So if your child doesn't receive public benefits and may not need to, then you can have a Dynasty trust for them, but you still might want somebody else to manage their money. The child can still have some flexibility, as I mentioned, though, within the confines of that trust. They still have some parameters where they can manage some of their own money. They can have their small checking account, they can have their ABLE account, so that they can pay for things that they want. They can go out to dinner with friends. They don't feel like, for every expenditure, I have to check with my trustee. What a pain, right? We want them to be able to grow in making good, healthy decisions. Now, you may have several children, and one of your children has launched and the other child has not. So how do you figure out how much to allocate to each child upon your death? This is a big decision. And I often suggest that people talk with their financial planner, their financial advisor about this to see, okay, if it really turns out that they're not able to work and support themselves, how much do they need for the rest of their lifetime? I don't do this, but financial advisors would do financial projections to see how much they need for their lifetime. And then you make sure that the portion going to your child who hasn't yet launched is at least enough to cover them for their lifetime. And then the other child who has launched, presumably they're able to work and support themselves, and so they may not need as much. But I think it's important also to talk to that child who has launched and kind of let them know what you're going through, what's going on. They might really actually appreciate more money going to the child who hasn't yet launched, because they see down the road when the parent's gone, they might have to take care of their younger sibling perhaps, or maybe it's an older sibling who hasn't launched and they're worried about this. I recommend having family conversations where you can talk about this honestly and talk about the future and say, hey, there are other options. You, other sibling, you don't need to be trustee. You can be trust protector. There's other flexibility that we can build in. But I think financial projections are super important to make sure that your child who hasn't launched, in case they can't launch later, that they'll have enough money. Now, I do always recommend that you come back to our office every 3 to 5 years and check in with us. And we can talk about, how's your child doing? Have they grown into their independence? Are they able to move out of the house? Are they able to work part-time? What does that look like? You may choose to reallocate what's going to go to your children upon your death. Make sure that the children are treated as fairly as possible. But you circle back to this, as long as you're alive, you can always change your trust to provide the best way possible for your children. Now that you have a better idea of planning for children who are still learning how to adult, I encourage you to watch my video on estate planning for children of differing abilities. We talk all about children who one may have launched, one may not have, and what different options do you have in your planning there. And I'll see you over there.